I'm in glorious Weston-super-Mare in the southwest of England. 85 years ago, almost to the day, according to local legend, a huge bomb fell into the sea just 2 miles out there, and it's probably still there. And 2 minutes later, a Heinkel 111 fell into the ground 2 miles over there. But what's the story? The Wingleader team decided to find out.
On the night of the 4th of April 1941, the residents of West Hewish, a small hamlet outside Weston-super-Mare, were awoken by a tremendous explosion. The following morning, they found the smoking wreckage of an aircraft. Most of it had disappeared deep into the soft Somerset soil, but the fragments left on the surface identified it as a German Heinkel 111 bomber. The RAF investigators were soon on the scene and found that it was an aircraft from the 3rd Group KG-26, coded 1HED. This group was known to have been a specialist unit that used the latest navigation equipment to deliver some of the Luftwaffe's largest bombs, including the 1,000-kilo Hermann, the 1,800-kilo Satan, and the daddy of them all, the 2,500-kilo Max. 3 of the crew had been captured, and at least 1 diary had been found. From entries in the diary, they found that this crew was only one of 2 specialist crews cleared to carry the Max. What's more, they had carried one twice, once to the Portsmouth docks on the 10th of January, and more recently to London docks on the 19th of March. Their target that night was Avonmouth docks, and they were so heavy that they used a catapult takeoff system back at Le Bourget near Paris. So could they have been carrying this huge bomb that night? One thing is for sure, when the Heinkel hit the ground, the Max wasn't there. If it had been, then West Hewish would have been wiped off the map. The crew must have jettisoned their bombs over the Bristol Channel before bailing out. So what was the Max?
Right, so Ian, this was a big bomb, wasn't it?
It's a really, really big bomb.
This is how big the bomb was. I mean, you wouldn't want that falling on you.
No.
It was an enormous bomb, which was very rarely carried by German bombers, really. I mean, they were normally carrying internal bombs, which were 500 kilos, something like that.
Yeah.
But this was carried externally on a huge rack, and that's why they needed the catapult takeoff.
Yeah, because without the catapult, it would have just trundled towards the end of the runway and driven to Britain.
All the way from Paris.
All the way from Paris, yes.
Yeah.
The catapult, or more accurately a winch-assisted takeoff, was installed at Le Bourget that night for 1HED. The Heinkel was positioned on the runway and a cable was attached under the nose that ran approximately 250 meters to an engine-driven pulley at the other end of the runway. At 2000 hours, the pilot ran up his engines to full power, and then a switch engaged the pulley and released a holding cable behind the aircraft. The aircraft gathered speed rapidly and the cable fell away once airborne. The observer aboard the Heinkel, George Fitzek, takes up the story.
We should have followed the Weston-super-Mare radio beam to the target, where we would have received an exact signal as to when to drop our bombs. But it appeared not to be working.
The reason the Weston-super-Mare beam wasn't working properly was because the British had known about it from the first day it was used, thanks to the ultra intercepts, and had been quietly jamming it, not blocking it completely, because then the Germans would have known, but jamming it enough to make them think they had technical problems.
So we set an approximate course for Bristol. After 2 hours, we could see fires from the city, so I prepared to move forward to the bomb aiming position. That's when it happened.
Unbeknown to the Heinkel crew, they had been stalked for the last few minutes by a 604 Squadron Beaufighter, R2252, being flown by Flying Officer Edward Crewe and Sergeant Norman Guthrie. Crewe wrote the following in his combat report.
I took off from Middle Wallop with Sergeant Guthrie at 20:55 hours and was taken over by Supley at 21:20 hours at 15,000 feet. I was put onto a course of 250 degrees and told report when I reached the coast. I was brought round onto 270 degrees and then 280 degrees almost immediately. and after this I was put on 330 degrees in order to slow down. I was now at 15,500 feet, and was told that the Bandit was on a converging course to the left. I was next informed I was 1 mile behind and losing ground. I accelerated and was put onto a vector of 340 degrees. The Bandit was well over to starboard, 4,000 to 5,000 feet distant. The final order was that the aircraft had gone slightly from right to left. At this stage, which was minimum range on the AI, about 800 feet, I saw 2 pairs of exhausts. I closed in and climbed slightly to 200 feet below and 100 yards behind, when I was able to identify the Bandit as a Heinkel 111. I fired a short burst of 2 seconds, and after doing so I saw a small fire break out in the forepart of the fuselage, and the starboard wheel appeared to come down. The Heinkel turned sharply into the moon, causing me to overshoot and temporarily lose sight of it.
Aboard the Heinkel, there was chaos, as Swiecek recalled.
The instrument panel was badly shot through, and a strong fresh breeze came through the holes in the nose of the aircraft. I had already pulled the emergency handle to jettison all the bombs, but a worse surprise was to come. On the right side of the aircraft were incendiary canisters with 2-minute delayed action fuses. The hit had ignited them, and they had not jettisoned. Immediately, a few of the bombs exploded through the fuselage wall and set fire to the wing, where the fuel tanks were.
The pilot, Herbert Rose, added,
My air gunner Van Kaldenkerken was killed instantly. He lay in the bowler and was blocking the main exit. The emergency exit in the upper gun position was also jammed through another hit. After my attempt to extinguish the fire by going into a steep dive failed, I gave the order to bail out.
4 men bowed out of the stricken Heinkel, but only 3 survived. Bordfunker Erich Blucher's body was found on the road in Puxton, with an unopened parachute. The other 3 came down safely near Kongsbury. The following day's newspapers carried the story and showed pictures of the still smouldering hole. Only surface fragments remained. The rest of the Heinkel was buried some 20 feet below the surface and would remain there for the next 70 years. In August 2009, the Wingleader team took part in a televised dig on a crash site in West Hewish. They had to dig a huge 25-foot hole to locate the wreckage, deep in the soft Somerset soil. Both engines were found along with a propeller blade and a nice bit of Heinkel that Ian kept as a souvenir.
Right, so Ian,
Yeah.
tell me about this piece of Heinkel.
Well, this is a lovely piece of Junkers Umo 211
Well,
engine.
and
Two-
how do you know it's
Because
an
it's thick cast aluminium. You've got the great big bolts in it.
Yeah.
It's the right shape for engine. And it's probably somewhere near the top because they were upside down, so you had the top cover was like the sump on a Merlin.
Yeah.
And that's probably where it was bolted on there, and you've got that straight edge, which makes me think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it was found with the rest of the engine, about 25 foot down, measured with the Postlethwaite memorial tape measure, which was dangled into the enormous hole at West Hewish, so we could see just how far it had gone in. But I mean, this was about, well, the whole of it was about over 1,000 horsepower, and 2,000 horsepower still couldn't drag the enormous bomb attached to the enormous Heinkel into the air, hence the catapult launching with a hook underneath.
Yeah.
But again, despite all the wreckage recovered, no evidence could be found of what the Heinkel was carrying that night. It seemed as if this would remain unsolved. But then the team came up with one last idea. In the German National Archives in Koblenz lie the recently discovered records of Luftwaffe 3. This air wing carried out operations over the southwest of England during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. Could these provide a clue to the Max puzzle? Finally, after years of searching, the team found what they have been looking for. On this page, covering the operations on the night of 4th-5th of April 1941, the following entry appears for 3JT26. 11 Heinkel 111s from 2257 to 0011. Height, 2,200 meters to 4,600 meters, with 11 SC500 and 4,176 B1 E1 incendiary bombs. 8 bombed by Weston-super-Mare, 3 by sight. In the target, 2 medium and several small fires created.
So officially, all the Heinkels that night were only carrying SC-500 bombs, nothing big at all, and a whole load of incendiaries. But it also says that all the aircraft bombed the target. You see, 8 followed the Weston-super-Mare and 3 bombed by sight. But our aircraft didn't even get to the target. So is it included here at all? Maybe there were 12 Heinkels that night. And maybe the 12th was carrying something bigger. We'll never know for sure. Either way, kids, if you're paddling in that glorious Weston-super-Mare mud and you stand on something hard and metallic, don't whack it with your bucket and spade. Could be a max.